some foods can be dangerous to you or your baby during pregnancy. So today we're talking about what foods you should avoid eating while you're pregnant, why you should avoid them, and anything else you need to know to make sure you stay safe and healthy, and your baby does as well when it comes to the food that you're eating. I'm Rachel Moises, a mother of 8 from the Mighty Mama movement.
And I'm Heather, a family nurse practitioner and midwife.
Okay, so let's jump into it and start with the first thing on our list, which is raw or undercooked animal products. Why?
Okay, so a lot of the food that they recommend, that we're going to talk about today, that to not eat during pregnancy is because of contamination. So you have contamination of different things like listeria, salmonella, potentially, parasites, just undercooked meat, food poisoning, that sort of thing. Those are the big ones that we look at. And we need to be careful because in the first trimester, everything is developing in the baby. The heart, the spine, the limbs, the eyes, the ears, just everything. And so we don't want anything that interferes with that development. And then as you go further along in pregnancy, it's just kind of a buildup that can happen. Alcohol is a big one. We don't want to have women drinking alcohol because of fetal alcohol syndrome with the brain developing and such like that. So, but the first trimester is the most critical. That doesn't mean the other trimesters are benign, but the first trimester is the biggest one.
And why some of the things we're talking about, you don't really have to avoid when you're not pregnant necessarily. So what's the difference there? Why are some of these safe to eat when you're not pregnant, but then you shouldn't be eating them when you're pregnant?
Right. And a lot of it's the baby, the developing baby, getting to the baby. We don't want certain toxins to get to the baby. The placenta does filter a lot of things, but it doesn't filter everything. It's not a complete filter. Otherwise, baby would get no nutrients as well. So we just want to reduce that exposure to the developing fetus and how it grows and not interfere with that at all.
Things that wouldn't really affect necessarily a full-grown adult.
Right. Or they wouldn't affect a full-grown adult in those doses the same way.
Right.
So that's what we're looking for with that, is just making sure that everything for this baby, the environment is as good as we can make it be. Mm-hmm. Now, the biggest question I get from people, from women, is, okay, if I can't do sushi, for instance, what do the women in Japan? That's what it always is, because here in the US, we think of Japan with sushi.
Do they stop eating sushi?
Right. Do they stop eating sushi? Or hot, spicy food, And I'm like, okay, the people in South America that like really hot and spicy, or the people in like Laos and Thailand, they don't stop eating spicy. They eat very spicy. So it's just the tolerance of the culture too, like what your body is used to in that way, because you're not going to do really any harm with hot and spicy, and with breastfeeding too. You just have to go off the individual and what they're used to that way. So with the Japan thing, I can almost guarantee you they don't avoid sushi, but they're careful. Do we do gas station sushi? No, we do not do gas station sushi, because you are looking at food poisoning there. Mm-hmm. What is going to happen there?
Higher risk.
Right, the higher risk. So a lot of these things you don't have to cut them out 100%. You're looking at taking it in moderation with some things, and then other things, looking at where you got it from and the controls with it. Sushi is a really good one. Is it clean sushi? Is it new sushi? Has it been sitting out for quite a long time? Can it cause food poisoning? When you're looking at other foods, like they say, don't do any lunch meats. And you can do some lunch meats, but should you have it every day for lunch? No, you shouldn't. You really need to reduce the exposure to the nitrates. Mm-hmm. And most foods, that's the way it is. And some of them, we're just being super, super, uber cautious.
Right.
There are also things that we say today that 50 years ago were dangerous because there weren't the same food controls. But we haven't changed it because it's just easier not to change it.
Right.
But the food is substantially safer in the controls and how it's prepared and the processing and the storage of it, that 50, 60, 70 years ago was not safe. So we've just continually said for the last 70 years, don't do it, even though it's changed.
Okay.
And so that's where we have to look at, the salmonella and the listeria, those risk factors and what we can do.
Okay, so what are some of the most common lists of things we talked about? Raw, undercooked animal products, sushi. What else should we generally be avoiding or really limiting?
Right. So with milk products, soft cheeses, those sort of things, it's the unpasteurized. It's typically listeria that they're looking at. But once again, the controls that we have for raw products are so much stricter than they were a long time ago. And so I know women that still eat raw and other women that are like, I'm not taking the chance at all. And so I just tell women, it's you do you. You do you. But if you're going to do raw milk products or raw cheese products, soft cheeses, you just need to make sure it comes from a very reliable source, that it is very clean, so that you reduce that listeria complication that can happen. Because I'm very much for choice. I'm not a don't do it at all, nothing. Probably the only thing I'm like, is alcohol, and smoking. Please don't do those ones. But everything else, you're looking at your risk factors and all of that. Now, I'm supposed to tell you, don't do any of these other things. But once again, I feel like in most cases, if you look at where it came from, it's not 100%. Because remember, medicine goes in 100%. Every piece of cheese is contaminated. Everything is contaminated. And we know that's not true, or we'd be dropping like flies all over the place.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So, kind of look at that. I will say one of my little things that gets under my skin is the mercury. They're like, don't eat in fish.
Especially tuna and some of those fishes.
Right. So do I think you should have tuna every day for lunch? No. Do I think, well, not many people have a regular diet of mackerel and shark and stuff like that. But you do need to take it in moderation. But then they say it's perfectly fine to get vaccinations that have mercury in them. Yeah. So
that don't go through the digestive system.
Right. And get purged that way. They go straight to the body and straight across the blood-brain barrier. Yeah. So that's the logic that I look at a lot of this, and why I feel like some of this nowadays can be foolish.
A little outdated.
Right. Because we have better processes now. And once again, so I can do mercury here, but you don't want me doing mercury here. That doesn't make sense. And that's why I look at a lot of these and I say, okay, you have to make that decision because the evidence contradicts itself. And that to me is very disturbing, that we're telling women one thing, but then over here saying, don't look over there, but you can do it fine over here.
Right. Okay.
Right. So because we all know there are women around the world that eat a lot of different foods that here in the United States, we're told not to eat, but they're like, well, just be smart.
Just don't have too much. Make sure it's safe, clean.
Right. So like I said, I'm supposed to tell you, according to United States standards, you're not supposed to have any of these things. But I'm also going to tell you that's not the rest of the world's standards.
Okay.
And you have to go off of what your knowledge is best.
Okay. So before we move on to the next point, let's just kind of summarize real quick. What are some of the foods that generally doctors and everyone are saying avoid, and we're kind of saying be careful and in moderation, or avoid if you want?
Right. So lunch meats are one, hot dogs, kind of the things with the nitrates.
Processed meats with nitrates.
But this is where, once again, they say don't eat hot dogs, don't eat lunch meats, but you can eat Velveeta. Really? Velveeta? Like, let's just eat plastic.
Yeah.
Let's American cheese. Like, no, I don't want you eating those foods as well, because they are processed and they are basically plastic. So it's not just the list that is given to people saying, oh, it might have this or it might have that if it comes from a dirty source, but it's perfectly fine for you to have all these processed foods. And one that's a bit controversial is caffeine.
Okay.
So they say, okay, well, you can have a little bit of caffeine. That's okay to have, a bit. I wouldn't have a lot, like 1 cup of coffee. And if you want to have a cup of coffee, have a cup of coffee. Have your cup of, caffeinated tea. But that is your choice. But do realize that every bit of caffeine you have raises your blood pressure. It raises your heart rate, which in turn gets to baby, raises baby's heart rate, and raises all of these things for baby as well. So if you have that high, baby's going to have that caffeine high. If you are drinking alcohol, baby's drinking alcohol. So realize that what you drink or what you eat, baby does as well. Whether it's, they say that, certain foods are really healthy for you, but they have these, like the caffeine, they'll say coffee is very good for you, but it does have the caffeine and baby's going to get that. Is it really healthy for a baby to get even that small amount of caffeine when it is a 16-week fetus?
Right.
And it's developing.
You would never we don't even give children caffeine in those levels.
Exactly. We don't, because what happens to a child that gets a hold of your drink, they bounce off the walls and they're never going to sleep that night. And neither are you. So why would we give it to a fetus that way? And so look at it that way. And
so do they generally say it's still safe to take caffeine?
They will say, but they say just take like 1 cup.
Okay.
Kind of. That's what the equivalent to is a cup of coffee is kind of what they go off of that way. So the measurement.
No more than that in a day, but you really may want to consider cutting it out completely for your pregnancy.
Exactly. Like they say, go to decaf or go to Postum or, something like that.
An alternative.
Exactly. If you're used to drinking tea, go to herbal teas as much as you can, just to avoid that caffeine spike that can happen. So, I don't know. I guess I'm a little controversial in this because I feel like so many of the things, the evidence hasn't been updated. But once again, there's no money behind updating it.
Yeah.
No one makes a big profit. So unless something catastrophic happens, they're not going to do research on it. And they're not going to update research from 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Okay, so I want to ask you, do you think, based on the research and what the effect that caffeine has on a fetus, that doctors really should be saying cut it out, but they just don't want to because so many people have an addiction or a habit and it's just kind of like asking too much?
I do. I feel like that bit of caffeine every day. So we're not talking about the, every so often kind of thing as much, but more I have my cup of coffee every day, or I have, my caffeinated soda every day. That's the person I'm talking to. I personally wouldn't do that because that is a reoccurring thing that baby is being exposed to. Just like lunch meat. If you have the occasional lunch meat, personally, I'm fine with it. But if you're having lunch meat every single day, that is going to build up and be a problem. And so my personal opinion is I would cut caffeine out for the majority of it.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think your doctor wants to tell you that because they know you don't want to hear it.
Exactly. And once again, that goes with the research that is it really up to date, So, so if you, decide to drink raw milk and you get salmonella, don't blame me, or listeria, please don't blame me, make sure you get it from a good source, and that's your choice. That's your decision. But that is the problem with a lot of these, like we said before, is the listeria, is the nitrates, is the mercury, the food poisoning, the salmonella. But shouldn't we be careful in those things anyway? The processed foods, the caffeine, the nicotine, the just all of it, the alcohol. Be very careful and make wise decisions for you.
Okay, so let's talk about a few healthy foods that are actually good for a pregnant woman, but that can have a higher risk than some others.
Right. So a couple of those are sprouts, which you think, oh my goodness, sprouts are so healthy, but they do carry the risk of salmonella. And so you need to make sure that, once again, you're looking at your source, that they are washed, that they are cleaned. As fun as it is to just pick those sprouts up and eat them, they do have that slight risk. So you need to be cautious of that. And then unwashed fruits and vegetables. Here's my story about that. So we bought a tray of nectarines from a store, and a very popular store around the country. And my daughter came down with salmonella and Campylobacter, both at the same time. And she ended up in the hospital for 8 days, very, very sick, had to have a ton of antibiotics and feeding tube. And it was quite a disaster. And what had happened is she'd eaten the entire tray minus one nectarine all by herself.
Oh, wow.
And had not washed the nectarines. Mm-hmm. Now, had she eaten just one, she'd have been fine, because my nephew ate one and he was perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. But because she'd eaten the whole tray of nectarines unwashed, that accumulation got her very, very sick. Mm-hmm. And so we told her, you must wash your fruit and vegetables. Even though here in the United States, they are, compared to other parts of the world, very much cleaner. We're not worried about it. But still, people's hands are constantly touching those fruits and vegetables. So make sure you wash them. I know for me, I've always just kind of washed and rinsed.
Quick rinse.
Right. But some people will get the organic vegetable cleaner, mm-hmm. Fruit cleaner.
Soak them in water.
Right.
Or you can do apple cider vinegar a little bit.
Right.
Soak them in water.
And once again, that's a preference. Where do you live? What is the risk factor? Have these been washed? Did you buy them straight from the farm where they haven't been washed at all? There's.
But still, while you're pregnant, just be extra careful.
Exactly.
I mean, if you don't want to be extra careful your whole life, just be extra careful while you're pregnant, and maybe when your kids are little, they're at a higher risk as well. I totally get not wanting to take the extra. I don't soak all my fruits and vegetables in that cleaner or something now, but pregnancy is a relatively short period of time. I think most women out there want to do the very best to lower any risk that there could be for their baby.
Another thing to look at is the shinier the vegetable is, or the more polished it looks, the fruit and vegetable, it literally is polished. Mm-hmm. They use chemicals, they use wax, they coat them to make them look shiny and appetizing. And so you do want to wash them, because a lot of times there is a coating on them to preserve them and make them last longer.
Yeah, and that's another idea. While you're pregnant, you could peel that fruits and vegetables you don't normally peel. Right. That's a really easy way to get all of that stuff out of your system.
Well, and I look at it this way: if you have, how many times have you taken some tomatoes or almost any fruit, and you've kind of squished it to make sure it's the right consistency that you want?
And then you didn't take that one, you got another one?
Right. Yeah. So how many times, besides the pickers and the growers and the packagers and all of that, how many people in the grocery store have squeezed your tomato or squeezed your, your apricot to make sure it was the ripeness that they wanted? Wash your fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
So that would be another one.
Okay. So one more thing we want to talk about is sugar.
Oh, yes.
We're not about to tell you to don't eat any sugar for your whole pregnancy. And this is kind of a big topic. We have another video that goes over gestational diabetes and baby size that you may want to watch, because we're going to just touch on it briefly. But how does sugar or empty carbs in general, how do we need to approach that during pregnancy?
So we are more prone to an insulin resistance when we're pregnant, which means we're not going to process sugars the way that we should. And remember, what we take, baby takes. And so if baby is used to this constant supply of sugar, whether it's literal sugarcane or honey or refined carbohydrates, processed foods, any of that, if baby's constantly getting that stream, they're going to be bigger than they would normally be. Plus, you're robbing them of, and yourself, the nutrients from the fruits, from the vegetables, from the proteins, from the really good stuff. And so we have to be careful, not only for our benefit, our insulin resistance, our brain, our energy, but also for baby's development when we are giving them a constant supply of fructose and glucose and any form of sugars, refined carbohydrates, that sort of thing.
So if your diet is toast in the morning for breakfast with a cup of milk and that's all you eat, I honestly, for a lot of years, that basically was my breakfast. Not
Right.
anymore, but, and then you have a sandwich for lunch and then pasta for dinner.
Yep.
That's not an ideal diet for a pregnant woman for a lot of reasons. But I don't think we're going to go too deep into that, but just limit your carbs, limit your sugar. It actually does matter.
And you'll feel better doing it as well. So that's kind of, I guess, our point in pregnancy is things in moderation, right? Whether it is that little bit of pie, you know, don't do that every night, you know, take a couple bites rather than eating the whole piece kind of thing. And everything should be in moderation, and then be careful. So washing your fruits and vegetables, or looking where your food is sourced from, and is it a safe source? Is it a good
Don't
source?
push it on the expiration date, or I don't know if it's been in the fridge too long.
Right.
Your risk is higher when you're pregnant.
Right. Look at when food goes bad. You don't want to have food poisoning. So,
yeah. So don't be too scared. Don't walk through life like, oh, I can't eat that. I can't touch that. I can't do that. But be, at the same time, more careful than usual. I think that's the main point we're making here, right?
Be conscious of your decisions.
Okay.
Exactly.
I just real quick want to let you know that we do have a free birth class called How to Give Birth with Practically No Pain. Our specialty is actually teaching women how to have a low pain birth. There's a link to that below this video in the description and the comments. So check it out if you're interested in having a smooth, enjoyable, low pain birth.